Today's proverb is Proverbs 15:22. You want to read that one, bud?
Yes, sir. Without counsel, plans fail, but with many advisors, they succeed. Again, it's without counsel, plans fail, but with many advisors, they succeed. So I was writing down this proverb, and I started asking this question: why do plans fail? I mean, we go through life and we make plans for different aspects of our life. So very often, why do they fail? And as I think about my own life and I think about big decisions that I've made in my life, when big decisions went well and when they failed, and if you can be introspective about that, I think that you can start to see patterns in your life of what works and what doesn't work. And so very often as I've looked back, the times where my plans succeeded is because I went and asked questions of people who had gone before me. And then very often when my plans failed, it's because I became prideful and wanted to make my own choices because I thought I had all the answers. And maybe I had good answers, and maybe I even had a good plan, but maybe I had wrong execution of that plan. And so when we read this proverb, it gives us this wisdom to know that if you're up against a decision, maybe it'd be a good idea to go ask some questions of some other folks.
Yeah, that's great. Boy, that's an interesting way for you to approach it. I'm going to read it again. Proverbs 15:22. Without counsel, plans fail, but with many advisors, they succeed. I thought about counsel. Who's the counsel? Who's the counsel I want? And then I went about, I had that thought maybe 2 years ago. You and I were talking, I'm like, I really want to go about seeking some, when I first got sober, I had Jack. Jack was the greatest counsel. And I had Pastor Gary too. So I had these older gentlemen who took me under their wing because, they had suffered from alcoholism in their lives. They had broken free from it through Christ's redemption. And then they were willing to help me and see me through it and show me what that, path looked like. To your credit there, what you're saying is like some guys that had went through it.
Yeah.
These guys had done that. But, it's been well over a decade, 16 years, something like that now since I've drank. And I'm completely freed of that. But I have other struggles. And it was like 2 years ago we were talking about it. I was like, I really need to start figuring out who, is some older guys that have struggled with some of the things I have. It was about 2 years ago the first time I had an anxiety attack. Never in my life had I even considered something like that. And then all of a sudden it happens. And I realized a lot of that was linked to being 40 plus, starting to see that at some point in time, this path on this plane of existence is going to end, and having to face that and seeing some people, family, and then outside the family that were going through serious health conditions and realizing like, wow, this life is fragile. And that's scary, especially when my life has become so amazing. And I love my wife and I love our kids. And we just have this fantastic friend group and great church. And like so many things are great. Work is great, everything. And then it's like, wow, someday this is going to end. And that was consuming me. So I went about seeking some people who have faced hard times. Dave Fox, our great buddy. I mean, weekly, what's up? Shout out to Dave.
Yeah, buddy.
He's got another health issue, and that man always has joy.
Always.
He always has patience.
Always.
He is a strong foundation.
Yeah, he is.
And it's because his faith is so strong. He just truly sees Christ for who Christ is. He sees Christ's plan in everything, and he's a great counselor. Yeah. So it's like setting up these people around you. It's important who the counselors are.
That's so important to all this.
And, there's the saying, the opposite of it, there's too many chefs in the kitchen. You've heard that. But it's like, who are those chefs? Because it does say there's a certain, even in that negativism, there's a certain amount of chefs that was probably the right amount of chefs. Yeah. So it's getting the right people, the right amount of people. Obviously for us, that's Christ-centered, focused on what the plan is. They're in the Bible. They've lived a life that has experiences that are both up and down. And so it's that counsel that you're going about formulating.
Yeah, Pastor Mike always says it like this: is you need to tell some people, but you don't need to tell everybody.
Yeah,
right. And so there needs to be some people that you can rely on, and some people that you give a let them know your story, and there's some people you need to let their voice speak to you.
Yeah, there's degrees of vulnerability.
That there is. But when you make a decision about the people that I'm going to listen to, they need to be people that have gone through some hard things or maybe gone through some similar experiences that can say, I've been there.
Yep.
Here's how I responded.
Yep.
Here's how I got through it. Here's how I made it worse. Because I think very often when we go through, especially hard things, we just get tunnel vision.
Sure.
Everything in my life becomes so narrowed down to this one thing that I'm going through, especially when you deal with anxiety.
Well, yeah.
It really just hyper focuses your whole entire life into this. I can't see outside of this one thing right here. Point. And then when I'm able to have counsel in my life that can help me.
They're unemotional, even if they are your friend and care about you.
Yeah.
They're not in that, flux position you're in that's washed over with emotion, and they're able to have a larger lens of the situation going on.
Yeah, perfect example. My thyroid, right? I had to go to an ultrasound of my thyroid, and I have a bulky thyroid, right? And I read whatever that means. I read the doctor's report, and I just got my tunnel vision on that.
I wonder what you thought it was.
I got cancer all over my body now.
Right
it's
away.
Everywhere.
I'm dying.
Everywhere.
I'm a week away.
This was fun. It was great to meet you all, but I'm
off to be with Jesus.
And then I send the report to you and your wife, who's done 100,000 of these ultrasounds, looks at it for 8 seconds, goes, "That's not it. It'll be fine."
For sure not that.
It's for sure not
Here's
that.
why.
Yeah,
by
here's
the way.
why. Here's why. And then all of a sudden my tunnel vision became, okay, I'm back to normal life again, right?
You text later, you go, "I can't believe how much better I feel." Yeah. Sure.
But it's not only just when it comes to health. We can take that same aspect if it comes to my finances.
Yeah. Gosh.
My
family life.
Right.
My work life.
Finance is a big part of it because when you're struggling financially, all I can see is just right here is what's in front of me right now. And this bill, my power's about to get shut off. How am I going to put food on the table? Whatever that may be.
Well, and how about if you never, my family I don't come from money.
Right.
So as I accumulated any money, it was like, what do I even do with this stuff? I had to talk to people that had money, had done some things with their money, had accumulated and done well with it and made it multiply, and go like, how'd you make your money multiply, Andy?
Your
and you go, I got this guy named Nick. You should talk to Nick. Okay. And it rolls itself into your knowledge, your experience was able to help me and my wife develop financial freedom.
That's it.
That's
it. And so if you can take just that message and then apply it to, just like you said, my family life, my relationships, my mental health, my physical life.
Yeah.
If you're struggling physically and
look towards someone that is physically fit.
You need to do something about it for the longevity.
And let's what would be some prerequisites you'd be looking for in building your counsel?
The way I approach this, I have mentors for all these areas of my life.
So you have different counsels for different things.
I do. I don't have one person that I go to every aspect of my life.
Seems pretty smart.
Right. Because, my physical Giddy, my boy Bash Mouth Supplements, shout out to you. He's one of my mentors and he's 10 years younger than me.
Yeah.
But he has a very keen sense of how to be physically fit, what works and what doesn't work. And so I listened to him on that. But I'm 10 years ahead of him, so I'm not going to ask him to be my mentor for my family life.
Sure.
In fact, very often it's the opposite. I mentor him and his family.
You mean so the relationship works both ways?
It goes both ways. It can go both ways.
Yeah.
And so I mentor him on family stuff. I mentor him on parenting stuff, experiences I've gone through. I mentor him on spiritual stuff I've gone through.
Yeah.
And it's not that I have all the answers or that he even does everything that I tell him to do. But he has the freedom that he knows he can trust me. And so he comes to me with certain dynamics that he's experiencing, and then I'm able to give light to that. And so I feel mentorship can go both ways in that direction.
It would have to.
But I absolutely believe you need to have specific mentors for every facet of your life. And they can change. Mm-hmm. But Dave Fox is a spiritual mentor.
Yeah.
So if I have spiritual questions, I go to him. I go to Pastor Mike. I go to some of these men that are ahead of me that I can ask these questions to help me see things maybe that I'm not seeing correctly.
That's great. I love that. I think what you're saying there and what should be kept in mind by anybody is, build a council of people you trust. We would suggest that those are people that are biblically oriented.
Absolutely.
if it comes to physicality and you're at the gym and you see a guy that's fit and you want to ask him some questions and he's cool or whatever, or she, if you're a woman and you guys, and they don't happen to be a Christian, maybe that's somebody you can influence towards, So you can always be looking for people. I have plenty of people around me, that work for my company that aren't Christian, that wouldn't claim themselves to be Christian, but I would say are my friends.
Sure.
And I trust them with things. And we have conversations about family life and about work life and these various aspects of things. And I would argue that sometimes I get counsel from that, or they get counsel from me. And it's always an opportunity then, if they aren't Christian, for me to, we've said it 100 times on here, but, Tim always says to me, like, well, have you prayed about it yet? And your prayers always seem to make things happen right through. They always seem to work out once you've been praying, man. So I'm just going to wait for you to start praying and we can get past this thing. He'll say stuff like that. And it's like, there's my faith also helping him to see that God is there and that, maybe someday my faith will lead him to his own faith.
Yeah.
So there's also that. So it
We're
doesn't
praying for that, Timmy.
Always. It doesn't always have to be a Christian person, though. I would say if it's, many of these, in many capacities, the ideal person's going to be a Christian.
Yeah, they are. Because the way that we live our lives is based off biblical truth. And so if the way I'm living my life is off biblical truth, then I want to get counsel from somebody that knows the Bible.
So how do they go? The person who's going to be that person, that's somebody who's in the Bible daily. I mean, again, guys, this is what we say I
want to know what their life looks like outside of the church the other 6 days of the week.
There it is. So I want them to be, I don't ask anybody to do something I'm not willing to do.
That's it.
I'm in the Bible every day. Anybody that's going to mentor me better be in the Bible at least that much. I want them to have read more books than me. I want them to have more years on this planet than me. Now, again, if I have someone that's younger than me and that shares, we can have that kind of a relationship as well. And I have people like that. But it's like the person who I'm going to really go to when times are critical, I want them to have as much time with the Spirit.
Yeah.
Or more.
Or more.
I want them to have more, frankly.
For specific areas, I want them to have more.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't be my spiritual mentor if I know more than you do. So
again, to finish this out, without counsel, plans fail, but with many advisors, they succeed. You get the right people around you.
Many advisors.
And that's those categories, all those various categories, and then the people that fit into those categories that can help lead you.
What are the categories people should be looking for?
Well, obviously, we're saying spiritual, familial, work, financial, physical.
Yeah.
What else you got?
I think that rounds it out.
It's a pretty good coverage. I'm sure we could come up with more if we were
You
to
could
sit
break
here
it out into a lot more, but I think if you can take those 5 and become very specific about those 5, I think those 5 bleed into the other areas of your life.
That's a good point. So go about finding yourself, setting yourself up with a good counsel, and at the end, it gives you a promise.
Yeah. How do they find good counsel? What would you recommend if they have no counselors? If they have nobody that can speak into these areas of their life, how do they go about finding that?
You're going to have to step out in faith. You're just going to have to take a risk. You're going to have to talk to somebody that looks like they're doing a thing better than you are. You're just going to have to talk to them and ask them, hey, I'm not good at this thing, and you seem to be. Can I bend your ear for a bit on that and see if you can help me out? I mean, most people here's the thing, is like flattery. Everybody loves a little bit of flattery. And when somebody comes to me and says, hey, man, you look like you know what you're doing at the gym. Can you help me do this thing? I'm trying to figure out da-da-da. I'm like, yeah, of course. And I take a minute and help them out. So I would say you're going to probably have to take, if you don't have anybody, it sounds like you've probably been a little bit closed off at this point in time and you need to open yourself up. It's risky, but I'm here to tell you that with each one of these risks, you're going to get a little more courageous and then you're going to build that counsel.
I agree with that. And the first person you ask may not be the person. But,
sure, great point.
Yeah, but if you're stepping out in faith and praying about it and saying, God, I'm looking to be mentored, I'm looking for an advisor. If you're showing up and making yourself vulnerable and meeting people, going to places, church,
and taking groups, that step out to ask and say,
men's groups,
I like what you're doing. It's a direction I want to head. you mind if I walk a couple steps with you? Everyone's going to say yes. They're just going to. The odds are that you're going to get the heaping majority of people to say, I'd love to.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much.